Alrighty folks, so today we're talking about Skeleton Ship for the 4th time. This is getting kind of ridiculous. Welcome back folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for dropping by and your ongoing support. My name is Patrick, host of the EDH Brutality YouTube page, in which we upload Magic the Gathering content and analysis every Sunday. Before we jump right into today's video, a quick and special thanks to patrons like you for making videos like this possible. And it should be noted that once again today is another changelog to my favorite deck, Skeleton Ship, in which today we change not only a few cards but 8% of the total deck. For those that haven't seen the original deck tech as well as our previous change logs, you can find them down in the description below. And are these videos meant to spike the price of this commander? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, the reason why I propose these changes and post about them is simple. I want to include them in my Moxfield primer. Not only that, but I've got several viewers that enjoy these specific decks, and I'm sure they would appreciate any changes. Because I mean, come on, let's be honest, how many people are really coming up with ideas like this? For those that aren't familiar with my Skeleton Ship deck, it is a Rube Goldberg machine in which we abuse various untap effects to either machine gun opponents down with our Skeleton Ship's -1 counters or other synergies.
It's a machine gun! Machine gun!
As a matter of fact, the deck is equipped with 56 infinite combos. And once again, if you're curious to the full list, a link will be provided down in the description below. So getting into our first cut of the day, we have Eaten by Piranhas. This was a permanent turn to frog effect at instant speed. However, at the end of the day, this only affects one creature. So ultimately, I decided to swap back in our Clever Conjurer. Now, Clever Conjurer is a 2 generic and 1 blue mana 2/3 creature gnome that reads, Mage Hand, untap target permanent not named Clever Conjurer, activate only as a sorcery, in which we did have this in the brew previously. And although this effect only works at sorcery speed, overall it is more in line with the deck strategy than Eaten by Piranhas. Next up, we did swap out a few lands, the first of which being a holdout settlement, in which the idea here was to use it on the Arbiter of the Ideal to ramp out permanents, or Scare Tiller to spit out lands. However, it came to my attention that we already have another card just like this effect, and with only 2 targets in mind, we don't really need redundancy with this card. So ultimately, I swapped this out with a Deserted Temple, which is a land that reads, add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, or pay 1 generic mana and tap to untap target land. This effect, of course, is much stronger, given that we have both Lotus Field as well as Lotus Veil, generating 3 mana of any color whenever tapped, as well as the ability to untap and retap a Sanctum of the Sun. So honestly, this was a no-brainer. The next cut we made happened to be Detection Tower, which is a great utility land, given the fact that we have many pingers as well as our commander, Skeleton Ship. However, the deck is already equipped with an Arcane Lighthouse, which is just simply better. So throwing this out, I decided to ultimately add in a Thawing Glaciers, which comes into tapped but states, pay 1 generic mana in tap, search your library for a basic land and put it into play tapped. This does not count towards your 1 land per turn limit. Shuffle your library afterwards. At the end of turn, return Thawing Glaciers to its owner's hand, which is rather slow. But once again, this is a twiddle deck, which cares about untapping permanents. So with the right pieces on board, it's not hard to think that we can tutor up not 1, but 3 or 4 lands per turn, not only ramping us, but thinning our deck out in the process. Our 4th card we are swapping out happens to be Crumbling Ashes, which for just 2 mana was a solid removal effect paired with our commander. However, upon further analysis, this has a rather low ceiling, because even though we are able to distribute any number of -1 counters thanks to our untapped shenanigans and our commander, Crumbling Ashes can only destroy up to 1 creature per turn cycle, which is just way too slow. So I decided to fill this in with a newer card called Unstoppable Plan. This is a 2 generic and 1 mana enchantment spell that reads, at the beginning of your end step, untap all non-land permanents you control, which not only synergizes well with our deck, but essentially just makes us win harder.
何すんだ誰だてめえカツアゲする気か買い物の邪魔すんな
Speaking of slow, let's talk about our 5th swap of the day, happening to be Tidal Force. Now, this was an 8 mana creature that allowed us to untap a single permanent on each upkeep. However, if we are going to win, I'd rather not do it on an opponent's upkeep. So ultimately I selected Mind Over Matter, which is a 2 generic and 4 blue mana enchantment spell, stating, choose and discard a card. Tap or untap target artifact, creature, or land. Which not only is cheaper than the Tidal Force, but far stronger if we pair this with any various tap to draw effect, such as an Archivist, Arcanus the Omnipotent, or even the One Ring. We are able to go throughout our entire deck, untap any permanent we want, and win on the spot. Speaking of card draw, our 6th swap within the changelog happens to be a Charisma, which honestly is just a weaker will breaker. Between this and other effects such as Dismiss into Dream within the brew, it's, it just gets a little too redundant here. Not only that, but Charisma only relies off our pingers, and without any of those on board, as well as ways to abuse them, it becomes a dead card. So ultimately I decided to swap this one out with a card that's far better to fuel our engine, that being a Verity Circle, which is an enchantment spell for just 2 generic and 1 blue mana that reads, whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. Which at first this card doesn't look too good, but take note, because whenever an opponent taps a Mana Dork, or any tap ability on a creature, we will draw a card. And this also turns mass tap or untap effects into copious amounts of card draw, whether that be effects like Turnabouts or even Breaking Wave. This is a card draw effect that also gets much stronger when you pair it with an Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, turning each land into a swamp, as well as our Karma Spell combo, initially used for mass land destruction thanks to our Skeleton Chip. However, in this instance, it'll equate us to drawing a card whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, making the ceiling very high. Our second to last cut of the day happens to be a Commander Sphere, which on its own is a great mana rock. However, it cannot really be capitalized with our various untappers. So ultimately I decided to swap this out for a Nyx Lotus, which is a 4 generic legendary artifact that reads, Nyx Lotus enters the battlefield tapped. Tap and choose a color. Add an amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion to that color, which if paired with any of our untappers as well as a Hemon's Aura or Freed from the Real, can easily generate us infinite amounts of mana. And last but not least, our final cut of the day happens to be Grave Betrayal. On its own, this is a pretty unique card and really fits the pirate theme. However, without the proper setup, 7 mana is just too expensive. So once again, to get our combo pieces that much quicker, I ultimately chose to swap this one out with a Jake's Archivist, which is a 1 generic and 2 blue mana Vidalcan wizard that reads, pay 1 blue mana and tap. Each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way, which due to the nature of this deck can act as a repeatable windfall. And when I mean repeatable, I mean activating this at least 3 times, if not more, per turn. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I said, the whole nature of the deck really has gotten out of hand at this point. As a matter of fact, like I said in the beginning, there's 56 total infinite combos within this select brew. But yeah, that's gonna do it for today's changelog. At this point, I'm very happy with the list, and the only time I'm ever going to swap out cards if they print new ones that have better effects. Overall, we did make quite a few changes, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on them down in the comment section below. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me, folks. So as always, if you want to stay tuned for future videos in the channel, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the show down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So with that said, my name is Patrick, host of EDH Brutality. I thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out, guys.